Okay, so guys, what we're going to do is we're going to add this little operation symbol to our window so it shows up wherever that window is going to show up. And so basically you're going to need to know how to set a model line in this family, and then B, how to assign it a parameter so you can check and uncheck whether or not you want to see it on certain ones. So let's basically open that family, okay? And I need to teach you a little bit about editing families here. The way that it works is a family is like a set of geometry that's constrained by those reference planes. Okay, yes?
Are you recording?
I am.
Oh.
Thank you for the reminder. So it's constrained by those reference planes, and then you lock it to reference planes that have dimensions that are assigned parameters. Okay? It sounds a little confusing, but we're going to explain a little bit of it right here. So let's open up the views and go to floor plan. So here you can see some examples of parameters and reference planes. And we're not going to modify a lot of these. Anyway, I'll just show you kind of what we need to do. So, so basically, I've got to draw some model lines on this family. And I'm going to show you in floor plan view and in 3D. Okay. So that's our window. This is our floor plan of our window. I'm going to start off, I think, just by drawing the lines and seeing where they show up. So let's go to model line. And when you open this up, notice that there are different types of lines. Okay, so it's different than what you saw in the project, right? In the project, all we have are lines, thin lines, wide lines, hidden line, pretty much it. This one has a whole different set of lines that are programmed specifically for the purposes of representing certain things in this family. So you'll notice projection settings and cut settings. They look different, and they're supposed to be used for it's like a descriptor. So like let's say we have a glass that's being cut, and that's what you see right here, right? Go to thin line. So this is glass that's being cut. So that is programmed to show up as a gray line. Does that make sense? So so anyway, and it's, I don't know what the black line is in the middle, but so we're going to use one of our hidden lines options for that. So let's go to model line again, and we're going to use hidden line, but this one we're going to have to use projection because it's not being cut. It's supposed to exist below the cut plane. Does that make sense? So like if we're cutting the window right across the middle, it's going to show at the bottom of the window. Does that make any sense? No? Okay, well, you'll see what I mean. All right, so let's add projection lines. That's on Windows, sorry. Hidden lines. I'm going to go from this corner, and I'm going to go, let's see, this is a, well, let's just go. Is it the whole width? It's not going to be the width. It's going to be 1/2 the width. But let's just go 1 foot out for now. Okay, and then we'll go across here. And we'll go back down there. All right. So what you need to know about the way that these things lock to each other, and we're just going to go with this outline of this thing at first, is that basically when you draw something and you object snap to it, it creates a relationship to that thing that you snap to. So basically if I have a line that I drew off to the side and I pull it onto this line, and you see how it highlights in blue, and I drop that thing on, it now has a relationship to that line. So I can check that to lock it to that line, so when the window gets wider, so too does the element that I just drew in front of it. Same thing over here. You can do it with the align command as well. So if I hit AL and I check the reference plane I want it to be associated with, and then I check the line, you'll see that that lock feature pops up, and I can click the lock and it'll lock to it. Okay, so all right. So the other thing that I need to do here, and what you're seeing in 3D, is that it's actually projecting down to the level that the window is associated with. So if you look at elevation, I'm going to go to the left side elevation. These lines, when I highlight them and I go over to this view, oh, it's actually on the other side. Hang on. Let me move this dimension. All right, so they live right here, and I need to draw or basically associate them with a different reference plane. So what I've got here, fortunately, is the sill, and that's probably a pretty logical place to put it, generally speaking. So you can't really see the names that well up on screen, but it does say sill right there. So I'm going to take these 3 lines, and I'm going to change the work plane to sill. See that? Reference plane sill. Hit OK, and now it shows at the sill of my window. Is that clear enough? Yeah.
Is there a different appearance for work plane lines?
You can change it. Why do you ask? I think you can. Because they look like hidden lines?
Well, I think you kind of knew already that the sill was a work plane line. Is that correct?
Yes. You can't really tell up here, but they're green. So that helps.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So if, let's say, you were going to edit a family, but you didn't know if it had any existing work planes, I mean, one way would just be to check through the edit work plane feature what planes are available. Yeah. Or just tell by visually looking, so they're green.
Okay, so there are a couple of ways to, so like without changing the way they look, which Revit doesn't really like you to do. If you hover over it, see how it says reference planes, reference plane, center, right? So that tells you that it is a reference plane in the reference plane category, and it's called center. Okay. Does that make sense? So if I hover over this line, for instance, it says lines, model lines. So it tells you what kind of element it is just by hovering over it. So that's a little bit helpful. The other thing that helps is that they are green, and they, the only things that show up green are elements that aren't real geometry. And then, if you really needed to change it, you could. But generally, green works well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I needed to change it, but just how to distinguish them from other ones.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So guys, the other thing that I want to do is, I guess, just test it to make sure it's working properly before I put that little triangle in there. So let's. What you need to do with a family is you need to, when you open that family, it's a separate file, and you have to load it back into your project. Okay. So how do I want to describe this? When you load it back into your project, the new version loads into that project only. And if you're trying to keep what you've modified, like save the family as a separate file, you need to do a save as. But don't worry about that yet. We'll get there when we get there. But anyway, so let's load this into project. It's going to ask me if I want to override the existing version of that family. And in this case, I'm going to say overwrite it. And there you go. So the key test here to make sure it's functioning pretty well the way we want it to is to just make sure that the one that is 3 feet shows the proper width, and then the one that is 4 feet also shows the same, like a proper width that goes the full width of that window. Is that clear? Okay, so I'm going to stop this video segment for a moment, and then I'm going to move into another video segment. But that is how you add model lines to reference planes in a family.
Shouldn't it be just for the one side of it, not 2 sides?
Yes, we're going to do that in the next video. Where I'll show you how to.
Because we make the one like kind of like one window, and it was not different 2 windows. It was just one.
Yeah. So
that's why they show up with both of them, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we modified the window type, and we need to add a parameter that's going to say whether or not we want this window to have it, without making a new window type. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Or window family, I should say, not the type. Yes.
Why did the model lines that you drew in also apply to the 4-foot window? Is it the same type?
Yeah. So let me clarify terminology. Okay. A family has many types. Okay. So this family.
So it applies to the whole
Yes, it applies to the whole family, all types. So basically, if you're looking at this menu, those are all the types. And those types, each one of them is different because of the parameters of the family, which are these, the width and height primarily, right? All those types, all we did was modify the width and height. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. You had a question too? No? Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next one where I show you guys how to set visibility parameters.